Welcome back everyone to our Let's Play series of Motorsport Manager. Now, just as in the previous video, unfortunately, audio issues continued into this video as well. So what you're hearing now is voiceover after the fact. And just as I mentioned in the previous video, I'm not going to make an attempt to recreate the emotion and the thought process of everything I was going through at the time. That's one of the beautiful things about making these videos for me, is that everything you hear from me is on the spot. None of it is rehearsed in any way. So what I'm going through here, obviously we're going through the bonuses that we get. Laura gets the pit stop bonuses to let her spend as little time as humanly possible on pit lane, while Chiaki will get the performance bonuses for both race trim and the tires. I'm going into, at this point, what you're seeing on the screen is me going into sort of what I did during practice and trying to determine which tire that I want to use. Because, of course, the idea is with a 23-lap race, I want to do as few pit stops with Laura as I can get by with, but I'm going to do more pit stops with Chiaki, again, just to be super aggressive, and let's just have a little fun with this. So I'm showing you, how many laps the computer is telling me that I can get from these tires. And as normal, I generally try to count on getting one fewer than what they're showing me. So if it says 6 to 8 laps on the screen, I'm counting on about 5 laps generally. So we know that we're going to have to run 7 to 8 lap stints in order to get this done. So that's what you're basically seeing me do. Now, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit and let you know that just like in the previous video, I'm not going to attempt to narrate the entire race because I just don't think it would be right. It definitely wouldn't be the same as what unfortunately did not get recorded that I was going through and discussing during the race. But again, during the race, you're going to hear me as I move the cursor around and pause the race from time to time. You'll hear me talk about tire wear, which is a huge issue to keep up with because, as I've mentioned previously, you don't want these tires getting below 25% remaining. Whenever you get a soft tire below that threshold, the speed really drops off quite rapidly, and you get rid of any particular advantage that you gained by using a softer tire to begin with. Now, the harder tires will allow you a little bit more wear. Once you get down to somewhere around 10 to 15% is where they start to really drop off. So you've got a little bit more leeway with those, and they're giving you a good reason to use those versus simply just going soft tire every time. Now, for me, I generally find that the softer tire I can use, the better off I end up being, simply because of the pure speed. But that's part of the fun of the game, is running different strategies and simply finding out. Now, what you see me doing here is explaining that at the beginning of the race, I'm going to use, instead of pushing hard on the tires, I'm going to lay off. We're already starting in the back. All right, in this particular case, we're starting 18th and 19th. So if by not pushing the tires for the first half to 3/4 of a lap or so, while everybody else is pushing, we're still going to be in the back most likely. But what it does is it gives us the ability to save just a little bit of tire wear when I think it's really an easy opportunity to do so. And then we can start pushing toward the end of the first lap when everybody else generally calms down and stops pushing. So here you can see we're pretty much toward the back. But the real fun in this race is about to happen here very shortly. So I'm going to continue to narrate through this portion of the race because I kind of know what's about to happen. And it gets pretty funny for me. Those of you who have been following along to this point in the series, first of all, thank you very much for your support. It does not go unnoticed and is very much appreciated. But you also know that there are definitely times during the race that I lose track of what is going on. I enjoy watching these races. I enjoy setting up the car, setting up the strategy, and then basically I enjoy watching it all play out as our cars gain and lose positions and so forth during the race. Well, what is about to happen is, and I've just paused it because I start to see rain sprinkling on the screen, and I just realized I didn't look at the weather before I started the race to set up the strategy. So I haven't been pushing very hard, and that's why. It's because I was planning to run full stints on these soft tires. I didn't pay attention to the weather. So what I'm explaining now is basically my lack of attention to detail. And so that's what I'm going through now and trying to figure out, okay, what in the world am I going to do now that I'm in the back, have not paid attention? So how do we go about it? And if you paid attention in that quick stint there, you saw that I pulled up the weather and it looks like it's going to get into full wet territory. And as I try to figure out what to do I go on to enters because it's sort of in between on a few of the laps. A few of the laps look like enters will be perfect. One of the laps is definitely full wets. So I'm trying to figure out, do I go full wets? Do I go enters? And I'm figuring that all the AI cars are going to go on enters. So I'm going to take chances and go full wets. So that is where the fun is about to begin. So at this point, as soon as I go on to wets, um, again, the fun begins. And so I'm going to step away now and just let you. I'm sure everybody watching has their own idea as to whether or not full wets are the idea. Some of you are probably thinking, why didn't you just split them up and go enters on one, full wets on the other? And that's because fun is essentially it. So right here, I decide before the pit stop, I'm going full attack mode on the tires I've got, and we're just going to see how this thing works out. But unfortunately, I do have to stack up the cars because staying out on soft tires through this rain, it just is not, for another lap, is just not an option. We'll lose less time by me stacking them up on pit road, um, particularly because Laura was first there, and we know she gets the quickest pit stops. So we lose less time doing that than we would if I kept out on the softer tires for one of the cars for another lap while the track gets extremely wet. So you can see now I'm going into full attack mode on the wets because I don't believe I'm going to have them on the car very long. But at this point, it's not working out all that well for me. All these cars are going right by me. I'm on wet tires, they're on intermediates, and I am not pleased because I'm thinking that it's plenty wet enough on this track that my wet tires should be. Now, maybe they're not the preferred tire, but I should not be losing all this time. They're not that bad based on what I've seen in previous races. So at this point, I'm more than a little bit agitated at the game for what I believe is a little bit misleading. Again, from where I've been in the past, where the wet tires should have been working at that time. However, now we're getting to the time where the full wets are coming into their own for sure. You see more pit stops being made by some of the cars where they're going on to full wets. And in the meantime, we're picking up lots of positions. So at this point, I'm going to leave you for the remainder of the race. I'll be back with more discussion as we get toward the end and have some final thoughts. So enjoy the race, and I'll be back later. now that the race is over, one of the things I'm doing on this screen is I wanted to take a look. We obviously were able to pull out a nice victory there, so I wanted to take a look and see the pit strategy of the AI cars. I had thought, because of the big lead we had, that maybe some of them came in for multiple stops within a 2 to 3 lap period, and that's why I had such a huge lead. It turns out that that really wasn't the case, except for, you see me pointing out the fourth place finisher there, where they came in for, as far as I can tell, no good reason, unless they had some sort of contact or something like that. So that's why I was spending time on that screen to point out, because I was a little confused as to why I had that much of a lead. But obviously a great finish for us, sweeping the top 2 positions on the podium. That is exactly what we needed for our championship trace. So here you notice a lot of those alert signs there, the red alert signs. And one of the things I don't see very often in Tier 1, in fact, very rare, is demotions of positions based off of illegal parts. I don't see that very often at all. And I think that's a combination of a lot to do with your designer. Having in Tier 1, you're generally going to have the best designers in the game. So I think you have less need for the illegal parts in order to get additional performance. I think that's a lot of it. But at first, when I came onto this screen, I thought, wow, there's a bunch of illegal parts that have been discovered, only to find out later that no, it just turns out they had some different penalties to deal with that weren't related to the part. So overall, we're able to take back over the first position in the driver championship, which is always nice. I mean, who wouldn't want to be world champion and have the world champion on their team? So that was pretty amazing for us. And then most importantly is we try to build back some of our lead in the championship. So in this case, what we found out last race, we didn't have the speed to hang with Steinman just in a mano-a-mano fight head-to-head. But in this case, we were able to use some strategy to get ahead and take those first 2 finishing positions. So now we come into, again, the final screens that you're used to seeing. This is where we take a look at morale, and everything on the team is great. Morale is maximum, and the team marketability is essentially maxed out. The main thing is to keep it above 90% so that we can have access to those 5-star sponsors, which are so very valuable. We collect our winnings, and then we're done. It was a great race, and it allowed me to have a little bit more confidence going forward. As usual, thank you very much for joining me in this particular episode of our Let's Play series, and stay tuned for more Motorsport Manager.